Hey everyone, welcome back to the Visually Stunning Movie Podcast. I am Mark. That is Ryan.
Hello.
Ryan, a big, huge movie that a lot of people have been looking forward to. Opens Friday, which will probably be today when I release this. I wrote my review. You wrote your review.
Yeah.
So people can actually link to that on our website as well. Fast X, the 10th main franchise installment of the Fast and the Furious. Wow, there's a lot going on. Or at least there's a lot of people going on.
Yeah.
Look, if people have read our reviews, they kind of understand it. If they're fans of the franchise, they kind of, I think, know what they're getting into. I think you like this franchise more than I do.
Well, I don't.
That does not make you I'm not saying you're a Fast stan. I think you've actually seen them all, however.
Yeah.
And I think I'm one or two films short. So, like, Fate of the Furious, actually, I know I have not watched. The submarine movie, have not watched. And I've never actually watched all of Tokyo Drift. I've seen pieces of it, but I've never actually watched it. And I'm sure I think I saw the rest when we were talking about Fast 9 or whatever the hell it was called. So a lot of cars, a lot of flashbacks, a lot of retcons.
Yeah. Well, yeah. This one. I mean, the franchise started out as one thing, which was about street racing.
Yes,
and
boosting DVD players.
Yeah.
Let's not forget that that's how long we've been watching these movies.
And then at some point they decided they wanted to be Mission Impossible, but not Mission Impossible like Tom Cruise's version, but like the. What I don't
it's the triple X version.
Yes, exactly. It's the Vin Diesel version, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. But there's where in Mission Impossible, Tom Cruise tries to make things as realistic as possible while still having a heightened reality. None of that is. They don't even bother trying to factor in anything that's real in the Fast saga.
Reality's just an illusion, man.
Well, it's just an inconvenient thing and that's fine. This would not be the first franchise to just do stuff because it's cool, which is kind of what they do. They just they said, okay, what's cool? What would be cool here? How big can we get that explosion? How can we heighten the tension? How can we make a villain that's more flamboyant than any other flamboyant villain? How can we, it's about extremes, and I think the problem that they've run into is once you've gone to outer space, what do you do?
Yeah.
And so, whereas I would say at least from 5 on up, there was this trajectory of getting just crazier and crazier and crazier and like further and further away from reality. They really have nowhere else to go at this point unless they want to do an entire, film up in outer space.
Right.
So this one, in a way, I don't want to say it's more realistic than the last film, because that's certainly not the case. I do think it's important to note that this is only half of the story, though. It
might only be a third. Didn't we hear rumblings that it might be a trilogy to finish off?
It could be, but and that's another. We don't know, but they're obviously not marketing this, and it's very much like what Dune did. Mm-hmm. They don't want you to go in thinking I'm only going to get half of a movie. But folks, like it or not, you're only getting half of a movie. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
And part of the it's 2 hours long. You have 18 people on the poster.
That seems right.
And there are inevitably. And there are people, and there are appearances that aren't on the poster.
Yeah.
But there's so much going on that I think that if you haven't been following the films, there are relationships that you're just not going to understand. Yeah. Now, to their credit, or maybe to their detriment, I'm not exactly sure, they've decided to go back and build off of Fast Five, which is probably my favorite film of the franchise. And in doing so, they've recycled a bunch of footage, and then Dan Brown, which is essentially, finding the gaps in where that footage is and inserting story elements.
Yeah.
That they can. So essentially, this is a revenge drama thriller that is built off of Fast Five. You have Jason Momoa plays Dante, the son of the villain in that film, and of course that villain died, and so Dante's upset about that. Not that was in there at the time, but they found the room to go and kind of squeeze it in.
Yep.
And shoot new scenes to go along with. I think it's old footage. It looks like the old footage. I don't think they reshot the chase scene.
No, they recycled all of that and then dropped in
these little moments in between. Mm-hmm. So is it cheating? No, not really. Is it like? I mean, we can't really complain too much about that. Lots of films do it. Lots of, Star Wars has been doing it for a decade now, at least 15 years now. So it's not like, oh my gosh, they're so lazy and whatever. But it is a little, the shoehorning in of the plot. It does kind of make you wonder, have you run out of ideas? Because to a certain extent, I think Fast and the Furious could do whatever they wanted for at least a couple films without really taking a hit at the box office.
Yeah.
They could do literally whatever they could make it about racing submarines at this point.
Right.
And even if it wasn't that great,
it would make a lot of money.
And there's still enough goodwill associated with the franchise that I think it would be fine and people would still come back for the next one. It's kind of, let's just say the Fast and the Furious films have never been overly complex. And so it's kind of funny that what makes this one particularly complex is because you just have so many people in a franchise that will not let anyone die or will not let anyone go away forever.
Right. It's weird, and I hate this comparison, but it's very Infinity War / Endgame.
Well, it is
in terms of construction.
Yeah, but it's almost even worse than that because, the way that this one's structured, I don't know how the next one's going to be structured. But when you have, characters who literally appear for what would be a glorified cameo, and yet they're on the poster, or they're, and it's hinted that they're maybe going to play a bigger part in part 2 or 3 or whatever. I mean, and the honest truth of the matter is Vin Diesel going to let anyone else have the spotlight long enough for those other narratives to happen? And I know that sounds like I'm picking on Vin, but he's been in every movie except for one. It's sort of his thing. Mm-hmm. If Paul Walker was still alive, you could argue that it's Paul's thing. But it's Vin Diesel's party, and he just can't say no to inviting everybody. Yeah, everybody.
Yeah. Do you ever want to be in a Fast and Furious film? You're in.
You're in, but you're also in for life, because family is life.
Family is life.
Anyway.
Yeah, it's... So, you mentioned Paul Walker, and you mentioned other people's character arcs. Let's talk about other people's character storylines for a second, because this movie starts with I was talking to someone, and they're like, why are we worried about Tyrese Gibson, Roman, running the job at the beginning? Why are we trying to make him into a leader, blah-de-blah? Because this whole, the revenge plot kicks off with Roman leading what should be a simple mission in Rome. That turns out to be a trap.
Yes.
It's an Admiral Akbar. So, but I thought about it, and I was like, yeah, you're right. But then there's a whole sequence later on the plane between him and Ludacris.
Yeah.
Where Ludacris basically gives him a leadership pep talk. And I realized that when I was talking to whoever this was that was talking about that, I was like, I said, you know what that means? In part 2, everything is going to come down to Roman having to come up with a plan and make everyone do what he tells them to do. Yeah. To save Dom, of course.
Or there's one other alternate path. Or they're trying to set up a spin-off.
Yeah, I mean, that's always an option. When you have 30 characters, spin-offs are always an option. I mean, we've already had one in Hobbs and Shaw. So, they could be, but they've got to firmly launch that out of this franchise, which means it has to come back in the next film.
Yeah, and that's logical.
But hey, look, if you enjoy what you're seeing and hearing on the Visually Stunning Movie Podcast, why not take a second to click subscribe if you're on YouTube, click follow wherever you're listening to us. Follow us on Twitter at VS Movie Podcast. Same over on Facebook. If you're on Instagram, it's Visually Stunning Movie Podcast. That would be awesome for us. We appreciate you listening. And now let's get back to the show.
But I
and therefore not necessarily probable.
Yes.
No, I know where you're going.
There is.
Just because it makes sense doesn't mean.
Yes, because Fast and the Furious, the whole saga has operated on, again, it's what's cool,
right?
And so, what's cool now? Because I don't know that. I mean, I'm assuming the next part has been written. I don't think it's shot. It may be. Some of it may have been. But there's nothing to say that halfway through, one of the power players decides, no, let's go in this other direction.
Right.
So I mean, I don't know that I don't believe that at any point there has actually been a master plan about where this franchise is going.
No.
I think they've literally made everything up as they go along.
Yes.
And while that's not necessarily a bad thing, because you could, to a certain extent, actually say that about John Wick, because John Wick was supposed to be one film and then it was successful. So, okay, well, what's an idea for the second? Oh, that's successful. Okay, well, a third. What are we going to do with a third?
Yeah.
So it's not like this is completely unheard of or necessarily a bad thing. But at least with John Wick, it felt like there was, I guess, an area that they were working in. There were walls, and there was a ceiling, and there was there was a space that they were working in, and they were going to stay in that space.
Yeah.
Whereas Fast and Furious, there are no walls. There is no, anything goes. Absolute anything goes.
Yep.
And if they can make it catch on fire, we'll get 2 of those.
Right.
And again, is that a bad thing? I think as critics, we struggle because when we go to a movie, a lot of times we're looking for, we want 4 things. We want, it to be well written, well shot, well acted, and and to be a good story. Whereas a lot of people will go to a movie and they have one criteria: I want to be entertained.
Yep. And there's nothing wrong with that.
No, and there's nothing wrong. And in fact, I wish at times that I was able to just go with one. Just be entertained. And there are definitely films where that is the case. That I like films that I am more than happy to admit are not that well written, or the acting's not that great, or there's an aspect of it where it's not good, and I still like it, love it, obsess over it. So, I think that's, people talk about the divide between critics and audiences, and, and I think that it's unfair to both sides in the sense that, well, yes, critics tend to be harder on films because that's what we're supposed to do.
It's in the name.
Fans are supposed to be fans,
Mm-hmm.
And so if you like Fast and the Furious, you're going to like this movie.
Yes.
Now, if you start trying to tell me that the acting's great or that the story is smart, or I mean, there are a lot of things that I would call you out on. But if you want to say no, I like watching stuff blow up. I like watching race cars, fist fights, craziness.
Yep.
If that's what you're into, yeah, it delivers all of that. It absolutely. But does it deliver a coherent story? Well, not yet, really.
Right.
Does it? I mean, again, some of the acting in it is not good.
A lot of the acting is not good, and I kind of hated to point it out that I honestly thought and I hated to say it, with as much abuse as Brie Larson has caught since she joined the Marvel Cinematic Universe, her performance was just so flat and bland and wooden. But she can act.
Completely her fault. Yeah,
no, across the board, the script is not good.
Yeah.
There is one above average performance in this movie, and it is Jason Momoa.
Okay, I was like, who are we going for?
We are going for Jason Momoa.
Yes, and even that you could debate. The thing that I think that people will either like or hate about Jason's performance is the fact that he is doing something different.
Yes.
And is different necessarily good? Well, not always. I don't know exactly what he was going for in this, but he is a different kind of villain, particularly in the Fast and the Furious world. It's a villain that we've seen in other franchises.
Well, not at this level.
Maybe not at this level, but I mean, it's more of a, let's put it this way. Fast and the Furious is pretty macho. I mean, it's testosterone. Everything ends in a fist fight, even with the women. I mean, everyone hates somebody at some point. They got to duke it out to be friends. Enemies, it's like animals fighting in the forest, disrespecting each other until they realize that they're equals or so. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, and Jason Momoa is bringing, I guess, a flamboyant femininity.
I called him a flamboyantly queer psychopathic villain.
Yeah, and I don't know that he's specifically queer. I think that may or may not be, but the rest, 100%. I mean, this is a guy who has a manicure party with corpses.
Yep.
I mean, it's just like, what the hell, man? Anyway, but is that a bad thing? No, I mean, probably not. I mean, it's the franchise can use a little flavor here and there, and if that's I think there are going to be people that hate his performance. I think there's going to be people who read into his performance in ways that maybe they don't intend. There's going to be a criticism, celebration. There's going to be everything.
I just realized that probably the most accurate comparison.
Okay.
Buffalo Bill from Silence of the Lambs.
To a great, yeah, but
except way more active.
Furious. Yeah, well, and he's set in Fast and the Furious.
Yeah, there you go. If Buffalo Bill was set in the Fast and the Furious, that's what we have.
He would have, because because there's certainly the kind of, I think there's a little bit of the Joker in there. I think there's
a little bit of the Joker in there.
Just that there's stuff that we've seen, maybe not as that exactly, but it's not unprecedented, but it's different.
In this package, it's unprecedented.
Well, yes, exactly. And so, I don't know. I hope I didn't necessarily. I don't. I guess with this film, I'm not worrying so much about like detail. I know that sounds weird, but like I don't need to know everything about the character.
No.
He just and I don't know that anybody knows everything about them. Maybe the actors do, but
right,
in
their head, their personal headcanon.
Yeah, when they're on screen, that's all that they like. These characters only exist when they're on screen.
Yep.
And is that great writing? No, not particularly. But there are so many of them that it's not like during the middle of the movie you're thinking, you know what? I wonder what so and so is doing. I wonder if they're like taking a bath or brushing their teeth right now. I wonder what their daily life is, because it doesn't matter.
No,
none of that. I mean, it may be about family and about gathering around the table, but it's certainly not about them sitting down to play board games together, or, you know, if they're not having a beer and toasting each other and saying how great family is and cooking, you know, I mean, there's no point in this universe for that stuff. And I think there are a couple moments in this film where, you know, we have father and son moments.
Yeah.
I wish I could tell you that those moments worked really well. They don't.
No.
They feel really forced. And part of that is the writing. Part of that is the limitations of the actors. Part of that is just the limitations that the film puts on. You know, we're here to see you blow up stuff. So how do you work in, you know, family stories, really?
Right. Well,
I don't know.
Yeah. Let's talk about the other issue in this movie, and it's the same issue they had last time. At the end of Fast Furious 7, whatever it was.
9, 12.
No, Paul Walker dies.
Oh, okay, sure.
And they end the movie, and they find a way to end the movie.
Where he walks into the sunset.
Where he drives off into the sunset, and it's a beautiful moment, and everybody cries. Then they have to make more. So we're now on our third post Paul Walker movie, but he's still alive. So what we have is this huge narrative speed bump in all three movies, where they continually have to deal with the fact that he's not there, but his wife, Dom's sister, is.
Yes.
Yes. And so in many ways here, so here's the thing. They could have let it go. They could have done one movie after, but they've actually now, well, like when Chadwick Boseman died, Marvel had to figure out what they were going to do with the Black Panther sequel. They knew they were going to do one, but they had options. They chose an option. Think of that what you will. Fast and Furious refused to make a decision. And so now they are still dealing with their inability to decide how to handle the Paul Walker issue.
Sure. But I think that this is, you know, I mean, Fast and Furious is literally a franchise that doesn't like to kill off its people.
I know, but in this one case...
I know, but you know, but they're obviously incapable of, you know, almost incapable of doing that, and it's proven to be. It is a sticky point, because it's like it's all about family, but where's that one guy?
Yeah, he's on the way. Now they've hinted at things in this one.
Yeah,
there's a couple of moments where things are hinted, but we'll see if they play out.
Well, yeah, and if they take path that they've hinted at, how is that going to go over?
Yeah.
Because anyway, because he's, you know, I mean, it's rough. But, you know, generally speaking, I don't think the Fast and Furious films are beholden to the films that have come before. To a little extent, maybe, but the relationships change so much.
Yeah.
Between the characters, you know, and you know, that's a lot about what this film is. You know, enemy of my enemy is my friend. Is sort of the you know, the whole gist of where most of the story comes from in this film. I don't know. Just I really don't want to overthink the movie any more than I already have, because I don't think it was intended to be overthought.
No, you know, no movie in this franchise is meant to be overthought.
So, you know, if you like the Fast and the Furious films, you know what you're in for. If you're cool with that, and if you're excited for that, go with it.
Yep. There you go. That's what you can take for Fast 10, not Fast X.
Yeah, not
the studio has made it clear it is Fast 10. Axel Braun has probably already copyrighted Fast X. So there you go. That's it for this week. Next week, we have a new Disney film that we will be talking about that families might be looking forward to. And we will see how that goes. So stay tuned for that. We've got a couple of screenings next week, including a new horror movie, The Boogeyman.
The Boogeyman.
The Boogeyman. So he's the king of all the other sub-boogeymen and women. So we'll see how that goes. But apparently it's terrifying.
I hope so.
So yeah, I hope so. I hope it is legitimately terrifying. I want to come out of the theater going, holy crap.
I would love having a sleepless night over a movie.
Yeah, that'd be great. That would be awesome. Let's do that. So there you go. Don't screw it up, people. So there you go. So that's it. That's Fast 10. Next week, we're going to be talking about some other stuff. And so stay forward to that. Stay with us. Look forward to that. Don't forget to like us. Follow us on social media at VS Movie Podcast. Website, vsmoviepodcast.com. You know how that works. Till next time, I am Mark. That is Ryan. Bye, Ryan.
See you guys.
And we will talk to you all later. Bye-bye.